Wednesday, March 3rd, 2004, and this is the beginning of an interview with Mary Wells Smith at her home on the corner of Clinton Street and Euclid Avenue in Elmira, New York. Mrs. Smith is almost 80 years old and was born on April 23rd, 1924. My name is Kim Wenrick, and I will be conducting the interview. I'm a student of history at Elmira College and was connected with Mrs. Smith through the Chemung County Historical Society while doing research about the role of women on the home front during World War II in Chemung County. Mrs. Smith, could you tell me specifically the organizations you were involved with during World War II?
Okay, the Women's Ambulance and Defense Corps, otherwise known as the WADC, and the British War Relief. I can't think of any others.
And what was your full name and age during the war?
Well, it started when I was about 15. That was when the Germans went into France. And Pearl Harbor was when I was 17. And then we were definitely involved after that.
Okay. And you were just known as Mary Wells Mooers then?
Yeah. Yeah.
And where were you born and raised?
Right here.
In this house?
No, in that house, well, on First Street first, and then we moved over to my grandfather's house by the college.
And what's your family background? Like your famous people in the city?
Always lived here.
Okay.
Since 1791. My grandmother's family. And, some people came as late as 1814. You know, I had furniture and stuff that's left from them.
So would you say your family is a fairly well-to-do family in Elmira, fairly well-known, or?
Well, the ones that came first made whiskey and raised celery. They sent all over the country, which amuses me because the celery had to be white. If it was not, if it was green, nobody wanted it, you know. But my father was the mayor of Elmira at one point. It was after the war.
And what's your educational background?
Elmira College, BS in history and English.
And at the time of the war, were you in a relationship, married, or single?
Both. I mean, I started out single and ended up getting married as soon as my husband my fiance came back from the war.
Okay, and what year was that?
Oh, heavens. We got married in 47.
Okay, so back to the war.
Yeah.
And where did you live and work during the war?
I lived over there by the college, 861 College Avenue. But it's now, they've changed the address to 315 West Washington Avenue because of 911.
And where did you work during the war?
I didn't.
You didn't work at all?
Well, I worked as a volunteer.
Okay. Did anyone else in your family work, or did you know other women who went to work in the factories?
Well, my friend Inga, who just died this last week, worked in the factory first at the Eclipse, it was called then. And then she joined the Waves.
Did you know anybody else who worked in any of the other factories?
I can't think of anybody.
Did you hear stories like what it was like living in the factories?
Lots of women went in the factories here. You know, the Eclipse and where was the north side? What was that called? Do you know what that was called? Over on the south side? Oh, it's right on the right. It'll come.
Were there other factories besides these?
Oh, yeah. Well, there's always the Hilliard Corporation.
And your family owned that?
Well, sort of. I mean, my sister and I have more stock than anybody.
Okay.
Lots of people have stock in that company. It's a good little place down Railroad Avenue.
Was that a wartime factory?
Yes, they made filtration equipment. Well, they made clutches too, but the filtration was, they had another factory that they opened up that was down about where you get on Route 17 on Water Street, and it was called the Arnott Mill, and it was turned into a factory just to make the filters. They were put on all the airplanes. They were about this big. And they were on the planes that took off to bomb Japan. They found that the planes were good, but they would fly such long distances that their I guess it's their oil system would clog up and they would crash, and they were losing a lot of planes. So that, particularly the Navy, bought all these. My father was always going to Washington to speak before Congress on, appropriation bills to make these things. But everybody here was working. I mean, everybody in Elmira was doing something.
Whether it was volunteer or...
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know whether the women were treated equally when they went to work in the factories, or what kinds of work they did compared to the men that were still at home?
I have no idea. I'm assuming that they were so glad to have them that they probably treated them well. The Rosie the Riveter sort of thing. We used to have a poster that was Rosie the Riveter. It was a big thing. I don't know. I have no idea what's happened to it.
What was the recruiting like to get women to work in the factories? Did the factories have to do a lot of recruiting, or did they...
Now that I have no idea.
Do you know what the women did with their children while they were at work?
I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe they didn't do it if they had children who were too young.
Okay.
I don't think there were any, I don't remember babysitting,
Okay.
that sort of thing.
Do you know, I know you didn't go to work, but do you know if there was a sense of a unified purpose in the workplace, like we're here to help the men, or were they kind of doing it?
Everybody it was a different war from the wars that you've experienced, because everyone wanted to help, the men were really upset if they couldn't go to war. And women, of course, were not ever expected to go to war then. But, there were bond drives. There would be something going on down in Worcester Park all the time, but it was always to benefit the war.
What kind of activities were moving?
Well, these bond drives were hysterical because there were quite a few artists in town, and if people would buy a bond of a certain denomination, they could have their picture drawn or painted. And they weren't doing too well one time, so they did move. And I don't even know where the darn thing is, because they put a nice little clip on the end of my nose. I never looked like that. Two different men, you know, were trying to build it up. I think if you bought a $25 bond, you had a caricature sort of done of yourself. And I have it someplace in this house framed, but it's one of those things that should be taken out and burned. Or maybe given to the Poor Historical Society for their attic.
Do you know, let's just talk about some things of life during war time, because I know you were more involved with that.
Like the what?
The life during the wartime. How did you feel about the war in Europe when it started? Just before the U.S. was involved, how did you feel about it?
Well, we were already working with the British Army, and we had relatives in Britain, so we were really concerned. And a cousin of my mother's had a letter from her daughter one day, and it said we have had an incursion in the literal sense of the word. And Mother looked it up in the dictionary, and it's an invasion by an armed force. And this was something that nobody ever heard of till the end of the war, because Molly shouldn't have written to her mother about an incursion, because it was when the Germans actually landed on the northern coast of England, and they didn't get very far. They were repulsed almost immediately, but it was exciting, you know.
So
everyone was in favor of helping.
Okay, were you scared that the same thing would happen to you?
I wasn't, because I was a teenager.
And so what were some of your friends and family? Were they excited? Were they scared?
Oh, I don't think they were scared.
Did everyone think that the U.S. would get involved?
Well, I think, we were a pretty isolationist country before the Second World War. And so it took some doing to get people. I was thinking about it yesterday when they were talking in the paper about that group leaving for Afghanistan for Horses. And I thought, the more people who go from here, the more involved we will all be. And of course, there was no choice then. Everybody was either everybody I knew volunteered. And there were a lot of people who were drafted. It wasn't the way it was with Vietnam, where everyone was resisting.
So you got involved with the British War Society, but did the war in Europe change your life in any other way?
I don't think so. There was a family that had a candy store downtown, and my mother loved candy. And their name was Pikes. I don't think there are any of them left. But they had escaped from the Germans, and my mother would go in there, and we'd never get her out because she would be buying stuff and asking them questions. So she knew about the things because these people had left family, and that was just horrible, worrying about what had happened to the Jews.
So can you describe your involvement in the British War Society?
Oh, heavens. My mother was there was a Scottish lady and a British lady, all Elmirans, and my mother, who were all the head of it. And they had this shop. It was like a second-hand shop. People contributed things. And they sent large packages of old clothing, mostly. I did a lot of knitting. You know, I wasn't here all those years because I was in Washington, D.C., but I was here for vacations. So I could knit up that awful wool. It was very heavy, khaki-colored wool, and we made helmets, and that's what they called them. They were knitted things. I suppose they went under the actual helmets. And what's the name of those? Anyway, I wonder what I've done with all that stuff. I had all kinds of British War Relief knitting patterns.
I think it's at the Historical Society. I looked it up the other day.
Oh, did you? Yeah, well, probably that's where it went. I give them the stuff all the time, you know, whenever I can.
So what else did you or your mom do with the British War Relief?
Well, we both worked down in the shop. And I'm having a hard time remembering some of these things. Mother opened up the underneath that house over there at the college is a big room there are parlors that go across a north parlor and a south parlor. And under there is a great big beautiful room. Mother had a proper floor put in there with dirt to begin with. And she had it as there were racks someplace around here. Now, where were they? They were boarded at the college, I think. And she made this as sort of a day room for them so they could come over and sit down and write and listen to music and, you know.
I noticed there were some documents about cigarettes. Were you involved in sending cigarettes to you?
Cigarettes were hard to get because they were all going to the soldiers. And of course, in those days, nobody thought a cigarette was anything but a filthy, dirty habit, is what my mother called it. My father smoked right up until he died at 88. He probably shortened his life, you know. But anyway, one of the things that we had with the Women's Ambulance and Defense Corps was a servicemen's lounge at the Erie Station. And we locked up all the cigarettes because we knew that the servicemen were getting them. But we would take out a pack at a time. And I was the officer of the day. Oh, I was the officer of the day for Friday down there. And one of the duties was to take one pack of cigarettes at a time out so that you could share them with people. It was really funny. I was engaged then, and when I would wash dishes in the little kitchen that we had, I'd take my engagement ring off, put it up on the shelf, and one night I went home at 11 o'clock, and I got to my house and realized my engagement ring was down there in the station, and I didn't sleep all night worrying about it. I went down and called the person who had taken over from me, and she found it and put it in with the cigarettes. So it was there in the morning. But it was, scary.
But you didn't get involved in the British Service Society and sending cigarettes.
That was about it.
You did that? Or?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know what you got.
There's a big sign-up sheet, and it was the recruitment thing to get people in the United States to send to collect cigarettes and send them over?
Oh, no, I don't remember that.
Okay.
And my mother might not have been involved in it. She was always against cigarettes. I always think about Libby Langdon. I'm sure that Mark Twain shortened her life. You know, he smoked 15 cigars a day. And if you've ever seen any of the things about her, she probably had asthma. She's always gasping for breath. And Dad was terrible. I mean, he blew smoke all over the place. But I smoked then too, so.
Do you think that involvement in the British Relief Society is greater here in Elmira than in other towns in New York State?
I don't know.
Do you know anybody else who was involved in that?
I don't, there wasn't the traveling around then because gasoline was rationed. And I started to learn to fly an airplane before the war started. And of course that stopped immediately. Who was going to teach a 16-year-old how to fly a plane when they're hanging on to every bit of gas? And you never went, I don't remember ever driving to Gurney. You just didn't use it. You used it for what you needed to do around town. So there wasn't probably remember once Mother and Dad went on a trip. They went for a weekend. They went up to Watkins and spent the night, and then they went over to Ithaca, and then they drove home. And I think it cut down a lot on people moving around.
Did a lot of Elmirans get involved in the British Relief Society?
Oh yeah, it was very, very busy group.
There was a membership list of 11 pages, but I think that was just contributors.
It might have been.
So was there a lot of enthusiasm?
Oh yeah. Anything they could do to help. And they sent box after box after box of clothing. I do know that. And those awful sweaters. You can't get a sweater over your neck if the neck part is not properly done. Do you knit?
No.
Well, you put the neck on last, so it's easy to take it off. And Mother would bring them home. And I'd spend the whole vacation, ripping them out, putting in a new neck.
And those were the sweaters that you sent to England for the soldiers there?
Yeah. Yeah, and for anybody.
So civilians can interest in it.
Yeah. Well, they really were in terrible shape over there. I mean, there was so much bombing when the Blitz started that people didn't have anything. Just awful. They worked all during the war. I don't know when it was finally disbanded. You probably can find that down there.
So did the concentration on the British Relief Society change once America got involved in World War II?
I don't know.
Did your mom continue to be involved in that heavily?
Oh yeah,
She concentrated on that through the whole war.
I think so. Well, and she had this day room set up for the wax. I don't know what the wax were doing here. Isn't that funny? Did you find anything about wax?
No, I haven't researched that for something yet.
I can't think.
After the U.S. was involved, so after Pearl Harbor, what were the most significant changes you were or here that you noticed in Ohio?
People kept leaving college to get married. That was, by that time I was in college, and my class started out with 150 girls, and 75 of us got married. 75 of us graduated, but quite a few people had gotten married, you see.
Yeah. Were you involved at all, or do you remember any part of the sign up for civilian defense and the huge enlistment and that kind of thing?
My father worked in civilian defense. He was aircraft spotter, I think you called it. He and some other man would go out and sit on one of the hills, and anything they saw was reported. I think because of the Norden bomb site being manufactured here, that although it was a secret, it put us on the maps as a good place to bomb if anybody ever got through.
What was it like to watch thousands of Elmira men enlisted every day?
Well, dreary, shall we say. That some of them went to the Far East, and some went to Germany. Not Germany, but eventually Germany.
Do you think the women were rallying behind them and excited
Oh, yeah.
encouraging them to go, or no?
Oh, yeah. Definitely. It's so different from what you've grown up with or heard about with the Vietnam War. Because anybody who could avoid it did, you know. Vietnam, but nobody avoided this. It's almost impossible for young people to understand the difference, I think.
So tell me somewhat about your involvement in the defense corps.
Okay. Once a week, we went down to the armory where we were all drilled by a man who seemed like the strangest thing. He drilled the inmates at the reformatory, and he was a regular Army officer, I think. And the reason that I never got any rank was because several other of my friends had driven the whole group into a wall. Have you ever watched Close Order Drill? You have to tell people to turn right and left when you come to when you're maybe going into a wall. And I could just never do that. Miss Spinner, who was at the college, who just died recently, in the last year or so, she and Miss Orbison were officers of the group. They were very gung-ho about the whole thing. And of course we had the servicemen's lounge at the Erie Station, which was probably our biggest project. We served, fried egg sandwiches. I couldn't make a fried egg sandwich for 20 years after the war. And most of the people who came to that were from Sampson, the Navy base up on Seneca Lake. The lights are on. In California, the women's ambulance and defense corps used their ambulances to ferry wounded soldiers from one hospital to another, that sort of thing. We only used our ambulance in the parade on Memorial Day. I can remember walking in that parade once. I thought my hands would fall off. Did you ever walk in a parade when it's hot? Don't you have that feeling? And people who were overcome by the heat would get into the ambulance. If you can imagine anything sillier. I don't even know why we had it. Somebody must have given it to us.
Yeah, I think I read something about that.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, probably. It was small and very old. But we never carried any soldiers because or sailors or anything.
what other kinds of activities did you have your agency do?
Isn't that awful? I can't think.
Did you ever take any of the classes that they offered?
Like what?
There was drilling and first aid.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we did those in the basement of the armory.
What class?
The classes. Oh, first aid, home nursing, you know, all that sort of Red Cross. I'm sure they were given by the Red Cross probably.
And there was some like firing guns and classes like that.
Never saw a gun.
Okay.
I'm not sure we had any.
Okay.
But we did, everyone had to drill, no matter what you did. I remember we used to get cakes for the servicemen's lounge from Lights and, you know, other bakeries. And of course, I rode a bicycle then. And I was riding at one time with 2 cakes in my carrier. And I was riding up Railroad Avenue. And I bumped the you know how the overhead goes. Bumped into that and the cakes flew up. And they came down perfectly all right, but it was just one of those days when you think, ah!
Did you, you say you took courses in first aid and home nursing. Did you ever use the information you used in those courses? Like, I know that there were some people who volunteered at the hospital, things like that. Did you ever do anything like that?
No,
Did you know anyone who did?
I can't remember anybody. They didn't have, it may have been an outcrop from this sort of thing, but they didn't have, what do they call them, gray ladies, or they didn't have those girls who wear the pink outfits.
Any churches?
Yeah. There never was anything like that before the war.
Oh, really?
So maybe that came about after that.
Okay. Did you feel like you and the other women in the Women's Ambulance Defense Corps, did you feel like you were really doing something to help the war effort? Did you feel like your efforts?
I have no idea. We were busy. Everybody was busy then, you know, doing something. And I don't remember an awful lot of talk about the war because there were so many secrets that we were constantly told not to tell anything that we knew. During the war, I went down to Texas at one point to visit my future mother-in-law, and we went to Mexico, the 2 of us, on a bus. And when we got to the Mexican border, I had letters from about 3 servicemen that I was writing to. Everybody wrote servicemen, whether they were engaged to them or not. I wrote my future husband once a day. He wrote me 3 times a week, which was not bad, you know. And unfortunately, I burned all those letters up one year. January, I have to be careful because I'm apt to do things in January. I sat upstairs by the fire and read them all and burned them up. And I wish I had saved them because some of the ones, because he had been in a group that liberated a concentration camp. And those would have been valuable to the Jews here. I told them about it, but the letters are gone. There probably weren't more than 3 or 4, about how awful it was, and how bad it smelled, and how they made the people come from the town and dig up all the bodies, and because they were in mass graves, and separate them so they were properly buried. And those would be very valuable to the Jews, those letters.
So you can't think of anything else with celebrities and people?
No, I can't. We were busy.
Right. So what was the general mentality or attitude of women on the home front? Back here in Elmira, what was their general, how did they go about their lives?
I think everyone was trying to do anything they could to help.
Do you think that they were often devastated because their husbands, sons, fathers, brothers were overseas?
Well, some died. I mean, a boy who I had gone all the way through school died. And, it was always awful. My husband's closest friend in the Army was killed towards the end of the war. I mean, it was a fact of life, Makes you sick every time you hear the news today, doesn't it? Oh my goodness. I would be so mad. You can tell I'm not in favor of Bush.
Do you think that the women here were anxious or fearful, or did they just accept what their husbands were?
I think it was just a fact of life. My mother and her friends had all lived through the First World War. I mean, that was when Mother and Dad got married. They were kids, 19 and 21 when they got married. But that war, that didn't last so long because we weren't in it as long. It was the same thing as the Second World War, that we hung back, sort of, But after Pearl Harbor, there was no question that everyone would do everything they could.
What about social activities? Did they carry on as normal? Were they different?
Well, there weren't any dates. Unless they were blind dates. There were Italian prisoners up at, the holding point. Did you hear about the holding point? That was up, well, it's still there really. If you're up at, say, Apple Ridge, have you been up there, that new part of Bethany? You look out over the valley, you're looking at the holding point, really. And it was a place that was just full of railroad tracks. It was a distribution center for the whole East Coast. And so there were quite a few Army people here. And I know one of the commanders lived down the street from my parents, and they used to have them over quite a bit. So, because they were away from home and everything. But there were Italian prisoners up there working at the holding point, and several of them married Elmira Italians from St. Anthony's. They were brought down in a bus for church, so they met the girls. Right there across from the college. Only it was a beautiful church and it burned. Oh, it was horrible.
But what kind of social activities were there?
Well, there were dances, but they usually involved people that you didn't know. We didn't have a USO. That was more in the movies, I would say.
Do you think that the social trees were left during the war than they were before the war? Or after the war?
Well, I know at my school, we only had about 2 dances a year in Washington. And that you'd think there had been lots of them down there. Except we were all high school kids, so, you know. The college girls went over to Cornell on weekends. There were B-12s, they were called. They were Navy people, trainees, and we'd get them to come over to the college. I can remember sitting, trying to figure out who should be paired up with who, depending upon their height. We always asked the poor guys how tall they were. so we wouldn't end up too much, you know, with, there was some fear, as I think back on it, because one of our close friends' daughter and all of her family were Japanese prisoners, and they would get almost no news. And when they did, it was just, you know, you were in a panic to find out what it was. And they all lived through the war. Actually, they didn't all live. Marcia's husband was Japanese prisoner who made the death march and went to Japan. He died about 3 weeks before the war was over. You know, it's just awful. Her brother went to West Point, and I went over there a couple times to see him, but he ended up marrying another friend.
Did you ever think of joining the armed forces yourself?
Yes. I was going to join the Waves because of my friend who had joined the Waves, Inga, who just died. And I went to visit her in Texas. I told you this, but it wasn't on the tape. And after about 3 days, 4 days, sleeping on the top of 4 bunks, you know, you just climbed up. And the lights were out when you were doing this. I mean, there was a little bit of light, but you didn't stay up too late. And taking a shower with 9 other women, they'd have a room about this size with showers coming out, and there was no privacy whatsoever. It was just awful. I mean, it bothered me. And Inga said to me when I got ready to leave, well, what do you think you're going to do? And I said, well, I think I could find something to do at home. So I came home.
What kinds of things did the Waves do?
What did they do? Well, she was a link trainer operator. You know, they taught blinds flying to the Navy. And they became, they were everything. I mean, they were mechanics. We were all in a single room, a dormitory, with these horrible four-tier bunks. You can't even imagine them, can you?
No.
Oh. And a lot of their time, when I was down there, they spent a lot of time getting their shoes to be gorgeous and putting white polish on their hats. Did you ever see a Waves hat? They have black, I think, on the brim, or maybe it's dark blue, and then the top is white. And when I was working on the curtains, they were sitting around polishing something, because of course they were treated just like the sailors. You know, they had to be, down there in Beeville, Texas, they had to be shipshape.
So it's just like me
And then, well, they were in the Navy.
right. How are women who join the waves or the West, how are they viewed by men and other women?
Oh, I think they were admired. I knew about it more from his standpoint than anything else. They had a wonderful social life, I'll tell you. Holy smoke. You know, it was just, well, that's where Inga met her husband. They were at Corpus Christi when they met. They had been, they individually had been invited to a ranch that was outside of Corpus Christi, where these people entertained servicemen every weekend, and so that's where they met. You know, it was definitely in a social, a nice atmosphere.
So just another aspect of the war that I was did you and your family, did you have a victory garden?
Did we what?
Did you have a victory garden?
Oh, yeah. Right there behind the house, there's a big garden. Between that and the brick house behind it. And I don't think my sister uses it much. Mother put eggs down in water glass. Did you ever hear of that? I don't ever remember eating them. But it was so hard sometimes to get eggs. I mean, everything was hard. She tried to, what is it you do with hams? Sure. Of course, back in those days, there wasn't any frozen anything. So it was all canned. It was a nightmare as far as I was concerned. I hated candy.
What did she try to do with the eggs?
You called it putting them in water glass. I don't know what water glass is, but it looked sort of like a funny gelatin-like thing. You put the eggs in this jar, you know, jar, big jug, and then you poured this stuff in and it preserved them. Part of that floor in the very furthest part towards the street is still a dirt floor. There's a room underneath the front hall, and all that stuff was down there.
So you grew a lot of stuff in your victory garden. How did that work? Was it just food for your family, or?
I have no idea. I think everyone shared as much as they could.
Was it just so that families wouldn't have to go and buy these things so that the food?
Well, everything was supposed to be going to the war effort.
Okay.
That's why shoes were rationed, you know. And you ended up maybe having, I love shoes, and you probably only had maybe 2 pairs ever with your ration book. Oh, I have to tell you, one time, Mother was going to can a whole lot of peaches, and she had the peaches, and she had sugar, because sugar was rationed. And we were at the lake down in Pennsylvania, in this rented cottage, and she realized she was out of something that she needed, so we jumped in the car and drove to the store. And while we were gone, a woman came in to help clean once a week. She looked at this bath on the stove, and she thought, "Oh, isn't that nice? She's got water boiling for me already." The sugar was in there, and she took that, and she went whoosh across the floor. I'll tell you, that floor was sticky the rest of the summer. But fortunately, the woman had, I don't know, 8 children or something, and so she was able to replace the sugar for Mother. You can imagine anything worse than this funny-looking water all over the floor. But, you know, soap was rationed. All kinds of things were rationed.
So you got an amount per person? So because
Or
she had
by
a lot
family.
So because she had a lot of children, she got more?
Yeah. Yeah.
I know also another thing that went on in Elmira was they had a lot of like collections of things. I know I read something about keys being collected, scrap metal, clothing. What was your involvement? What you interested in?
Oh, I never had any involvement, but one of the things that was too bad was that everybody had iron fences around their property, and almost all of those are gone. There's one down the block from the college, you know that house with the pillars? That fence, the fence that was there was gone. But because it was supposed to be used for bullets. And that fence, my aunt used to live in that house. I mean, it was her house until she died. And that was a family house, as a matter of fact. I shouldn't get into this. But it used to be up in the street in Washington Avenue before Washington Avenue was a street. It was a farm. And that's where my family lived. You know, before they built the Victorian house. And Mother asked her father once, where did they live when the house was being built? And it's called an Italian country villa. Don't you love it? I found it in the pattern book. There were regular pattern books, you know, back in the Victorian time. But anyway, they lived in the old house. And the farm went all the way to Davis Street. So after they finished the new house, I always thought maybe that's why it was flat on that side, because they're living in the side yard, you see. Then they moved that back. They took off 2 wings, and their houses down on Davis Street. Weird. Then the street was cut through, you see. But anyway, that fence came from the YWCA downtown. I don't know why they didn't give it to the war effort, but they didn't. And so when the old Y was being torn down, my aunt bought the fence and put it, you know, back in front of her house.
Do you have any other stories about things during the war that you remember?
I have to get you a picture. Show it to you. There were lots of parties when the boys came home. And there was a whole page a party that was over at the Naval's house over here, that pretty house, kitty corner from this block through this way. And this is my husband. He was not local, of course, but he just happened to be here. And he was from Texas. And this was Art Shoemaker. He has died. Joe Buck is still alive. But that was the sort of thing. There was a whole sheet of pictures of people at this party. Oh boy, is that dusty. Awful. 1947. You know, they didn't get home immediately. I mean, I know Kay spent a year in France as an MP, after the war was over. Military police.
Okay.
If they got home, they were lucky. Another friend's brother was in the Far East, and he said he always felt badly because he made a lot of those landings out in the Pacific, and they got to the Philippines, and they found an old ice cream plant that had not been used for a long time, but one of his men knew how to make ice cream, and so they fixed up the place, and the poor guy was stuck there for years.
Making ice cream?
Making ice cream in the Army. I mean, you know.
That's interesting. Do you remember where you were on duty day or VJ day?
Oh boy, do I. Well, no, isn't that funny? I don't know about VE. VJ, I was here. God, I got so drunk that night, isn't that awful? I drank Southern Comfort of all the awful things. You know how, did you ever drink any of it? It'll give you an instant headache. And I can remember going to bed on the early side. I was at the college, of course. And we were definitely celebrating. And I could hear the celebration going on. People drove around town, honking horns, ringing bells, you know. I didn't care at that point. That's awful. I shouldn't even have said that.
That's okay. How did the end of the war change your life as a woman?
Well, my husband came home. I mean, my fiance, and we got married. I don't know. I can't think.
Well, I'm assuming your involvement in WABC ended.
Well, isn't that funny? I have no recollection of it closing down at all. I mean, some things I remember. I used to be involved with the Mark Twain Society, and when we decided to disband that because the men who wrote the book decided that there wasn't anything further to do, we had a meeting over at the college, and everybody was tired, and the college had more or less taken over what needed to be done, you know, with the Mark Twain Society. There was none of that before. And we had this meeting. A couple of people said, oh, well, they would be the secretary or something. Well, there really wasn't without Wisby and Jerome, there wasn't the enthusiasm. And we had $15,000 left. So we voted to give it to the college for the Marketing Studies thing, which I think was very successful.
But you don't remember the ending of the WABC?
No.
Do you think life for other women in Elmira changed at the end of the war?
Well, of course, the war effort in the factories just died, you know. So people were laid off, the lights were on. And lots of people got married, or they went back to picking up the pieces of their marriage. You know, they had a big boom in babies right after the war, when all the men came home. You could probably figure that out from some of them.
Yeah, my parents are part of that.
Oh, are they?
Do you think that some women kind of felt like their purpose was over? Maybe because they no longer they weren't working anymore, they just went back to being a wife or a mother?
I think probably that some of them were probably glad to go back home, you know. But probably the women's movement got a boost, don't you think? For one thing, they found out women could do things. I don't know whether there was that much involvement in the First World War of women doing things. I know my mother worked in the canteen for the Red Cross, and they used to give...
Do you know any women who left their jobs or stayed in their jobs? Or, I mean, who didn't leave their jobs, who stayed there and worked just like anyone? Didn't want to.
I think it's pretty much turned into a man's world again. I'm sure that the fact that most women work today probably had to do, some of that to do with getting out and doing it, don't you think?
What kinds of things did women turn their energy to?
I don't know. Maybe gardening. My mother always gardened. I'm no good at all raising vegetables. It's hopeless. Something always eats them.
Did you have any other stories about the war?
I can't think of anything.
Well, thanks for your time. It was very, very good meeting with you, and I think I have some pretty good information to come very good research people here.
I think probably people being busy is about as good a description as you could get about Elmira.
Oh, one more thing. The Northern Bomb site, you had mentioned that, but what did you know about that?
Very little, because it was all in that big, it was the old Morrow plant. And I don't think there's much of it left, if any. It's just south of the Southside High School, the new high school. New. And it was a busy place. But it was such a secret. The Norden bomb site was, I think, one of the things that made us win the war. They were on airplanes, and I don't know much about them because it was such a secret. It's funny, you know, the Russians were our friends during the war, and Russians came to Elmira, sort of on inspection trips and stuff. I know Dad had one down at the Hayward one time, and it was a different world, don't you think?
So the Russians came to kind of figure out what the U.S. was doing, try to learn what they were doing?
Probably. Yeah, and you tell them anything they wanted to know then. Right. You know, they weren't our enemies at that point.
Right.
They were fighting the Germans too.
Yeah.
Somebody can tell you down at the Historical Society what the Northern Bomb site was. I mean, it was something that was attached in aircraft that made it easier to bomb places. Horrible thought.
Thank you.
Well, I can't think of anything else.
Okay. If I have any other questions, I'll call you.
Okay.
And that's the end of our interview.